In this exploration, we'll uncover the hidden truths nestled within The Voice of the Silence, a mystical guide authored by Helena Blavatsky, an enigmatic figure often seen as one of the most polarizing spiritual thinkers of the 19th century. This obscure yet profound work holds within its poetic verses a message meant not just to be read, but to be felt and remembered by the soul itself. It's a call to awaken, a whisper from the deepest layers of existence urging us to reclaim the divine essence that lives quietly at the center of our being. First published in 1889, just a few years before Blavatsky's death, The Voice of the Silence remains a spiritual anomaly. Though only a small book in size, its spiritual depth is vast and stirring. It offers not merely metaphor or mysticism, but a map etched in symbolic language pointing toward levels of consciousness often left unspoken in both mainstream religion and contemporary self-help spirituality. Blavatsky did not present herself as the originator of these teachings, but rather as a translator of a much older tradition, one kept alive for millennia in the Indo-Tibetan mystical orders. These secretive schools preserved esoteric teachings through a lineage of spiritual masters who had refined their perception far beyond the limits of ordinary human senses. These adepts, sometimes called Mahatmas, were not mythic figures of legend, but actual beings who existed outside the bounds of common societal paradigms. They were custodians of a primordial truth, a universal wisdom long buried beneath dogma and institutional control. The original text, from which Blavatsky drew her translation, is known as the Book of the Golden Precepts, a sacred manuscript from the East. It is said to have been memorized and passed down by oral transmission, protected by those who understood its potency. These teachings were kept hidden not from arrogance or exclusion, but out of a sacred understanding. In the wrong hands, these truths could be distorted, even weaponized. At the heart of the book lies a concept so subtle, so otherworldly, that it can only be encountered in a state of profound stillness. The voice of nada. Nada is the soundless sound, a vibration that doesn't resonate in the ears, but is instead heard in the soul. It exists beyond the realm of thought and language, pulsing quietly at the foundation of all things. This is not a metaphor. It is a literal frequency of consciousness, one that calls each of us home. In the stillness of true silence, beyond the chatter of the thinking mind, this voice begins to whisper. It is the vibration of our divine origin, a signature note of the universe itself, reverberating through us when we tune our awareness deeply inward. According to Blavatsky, this is not a sound you create or imagine. It's already there, always has been. The only barrier is the noise of your own mind. In our age of digital chaos and sensory overload, where distractions bombard us every moment, this teaching could not be more urgent. We have grown deaf to the sacred whisper within us. The algorithms of social media mimic consciousness, but feed us illusions. We scroll endlessly, mistaking stimulation for awareness. But the voice of the silence slices through this digital fog, reminding us that awakening is not about external novelty. It's about inner alignment. Blavatsky's role in all of this is unusual. She never claimed authorship in the traditional sense. Instead, she positioned herself as a spiritual courier, delivering the essence of the esoteric East to a West that had forgotten its spiritual roots. Her journey through Tibet, shrouded in mystery and controversy, led her to initiations few outsiders were ever permitted to undergo. She was granted access not only to sacred texts, but to living teachings, teachings that predated and underpinned all modern religions. What she brought back wasn't just mystical poetry or vague inspiration, but a methodical approach to awakening, one that aligned with ancient science and that now finds unexpected confirmation in the frontier theories of quantum physics. The old sages of Tibet taught that matter is not fixed and dead, but conscious and fluid. That the observer is not separate from the observed. That the universe responds to attention. That thought shapes reality. And that consciousness is the fundamental substance of existence. These are not ideas confined to temples. They are principles now echoed in scientific laboratories. And so, the voice of the silence does something few spiritual texts achieve. It provides a detailed blueprint for inner evolution. Not just abstract values or spiritual platitudes, but tangible instructions, descriptions of thresholds, stages, dangers, and signs of genuine awakening. Blavatsky doesn't sugarcoat the path. She marks the real hazards: egoic delusion masquerading as progress, the seduction of psychic powers, the vanity of premature enlightenment. She warns that the mind, our most trusted instrument, is also our greatest obstacle. The mind is the slayer of the real, she writes. This line is not just poetic, it's diagnostic. Our thoughts create a simulation of reality, a second-hand version of life shaped by memory, bias, fear, and desire. Even spiritual experiences can become just another product of the mind, reduced to ideas rather than experienced as transformation. Today's meditation apps and stress relief techniques often miss this deeper truth. They soothe the surface, but rarely touch the core. True silence, the kind that leads to awakening, doesn't come from relaxation. It comes from radical self-inquiry. Blavatsky's teachings demand that we watch the mind, disidentify from its drama, and discover the awareness in which thought itself arises. This process, when practiced with dedication, reveals something miraculous, a form of knowing that doesn't require thinking. This silent knowing, pure awareness, is what the mystics have always described. It is the state in which duality dissolves, where self and other merge, where the boundaries of identity become transparent, and what remains is simply presence. From this place, the seeker encounters the 7 paramitas, virtues not as moral obligations, but as states of spiritual alchemy. These aren't merely good behaviors. They are capacities that fundamentally alter the way one exists. The first is dana, or generosity, not just of resources, but of spirit. To live in the flow of giving is to break the trance of scarcity and reconnect to the abundance of the soul. Then comes Shila, a deeper morality born not from rules, but from alignment. When thoughts, words, and deeds harmonize, the energy within you becomes coherent and spiritual potency increases. Kshanti follows. A patience so profound it remains undisturbed by conflict or insult. In a world addicted to outrage, this is revolutionary stillness. Viraga teaches detachment, not the coldness of apathy, but the luminous spaciousness that allows all things to pass through without clinging. Virya, the power of spiritual effort, arises not from willpower, but from being moved by a truth deeper than ego. And then dhyana, meditation, not as a technique, but as a natural resting in awareness. Finally, prajna, transcendental wisdom. This is not intellect. It is the capacity to see things as they truly are, directly and all at once. These 7 qualities don't unfold in a strict order, but spiral together, deepening as the soul matures. And then we encounter the great fork in the road. Most traditions stop at personal liberation. But Blavatsky, echoing the ancient wisdom of the East, presents 2 paths, one of self-realization, the other of selfless service. The first leads to the enlightenment of the individual. The second, far more difficult, leads to the path of the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva is the one who renounces full liberation until all beings are free. Not out of martyrdom, but from deep knowing. The illusion of separation has been broken, and in its place arises a compassion not born of pity, but of truth. The suffering of another is your own. Their freedom becomes your mission. This flips the modern spiritual narrative on its head. Today, we're sold a version of spirituality designed for personal enhancement. Better sleep, more success, a shinier life. But the ancient path is not about improving the self, it's about dissolving it, not for annihilation, but for expansion. In surrendering the illusion of separateness, you awaken into a self far greater than the one you've always defended. At the core of all this lies a powerful symbol, the silver thread. This ethereal strand connects your present self to your eternal self. It is the unbreakable link between your conscious awareness and the universal source. You don't have to create it. It's already there. It's always been there. Even when you feel lost or broken, this thread holds. It's the intuitive knowing that seems to come from nowhere. The flash of inspiration, the gut feeling, the silent nudge in the right direction. That's the thread at work. As your awareness deepens, this thread strengthens, eventually becoming a luminous current of energy guiding your entire life. It is this thread that carries you back, again and again, to your center. No matter how many lifetimes you forget, no matter how many identities you wear, the connection remains. Blavatsky's message is clear. You can't be separated from your source. You can only believe that you are. As the seeker progresses, the silver thread doesn't just guide from a distance, it begins to illuminate the entire path from within. What was once a whisper becomes a resonance, a knowing so intimate and unmistakable it cannot be confused with thought. At this stage, the inner light begins to reveal what Blavatsky called the destructor. This presence isn't a demon or an enemy. It's something far more personal. It is the accumulated weight of everything you've denied within yourself, the fears you've avoided, the pain you've suppressed, the anger you've rationalized away, the desires you've deemed unacceptable. These fragments of the psyche, hidden in the shadows of awareness, form a kind of psychic gravity that pulls the soul back into unconscious patterns just as it begins to ascend. The destructor is not a punishment. It is a necessary gatekeeper. Because nothing false can pass into truth. Every part of you must be seen, known, and integrated. No aspect of your being can be left behind on the path to wholeness. Not the pain, not the shame, not even the rage. These are not obstacles to awakening. They are the raw material of transformation. Blavatsky echoes the ancient wisdom that true spiritual strength is not about suppressing the shadow, but befriending it. You must confront this inner adversary not with judgment, but with radical compassion. You must gaze into the parts of yourself you've spent lifetimes avoiding and say, I see you. I understand why you exist. Let's come home. This process requires what the text calls the child state, a return to the original innocence not of ignorance, but of openness. It's not about becoming naive, it's about becoming whole. In this state, the mind is no longer segmented by shame or defense. The soul is no longer fragmented. You are one being again, undivided. This, Blavatsky says, is the birth of the diamond soul. Not a soul free of pain, but a soul made unbreakable because nothing within it is denied. Like a diamond, it has endured immense pressure and emerged with clarity and strength. The light now passes through it without distortion. The teachings here are revolutionary because they don't present perfection as purity. Instead, perfection is presented as integration. The more of yourself you're willing to bring into the light, the more powerful and luminous your consciousness becomes. Your wounds don't disqualify you from awakening. They are the path to it. Every fear, when faced fully, transmutes into courage. Every suppressed emotion, when honored, becomes a source of strength. Even the ego, when understood, becomes a servant rather than a tyrant. This is spiritual alchemy, not escaping life, but transforming within it. This is where the voice of the silence departs most radically from watered-down spirituality. It doesn't promise an easy ascent to bliss. It promises truth, and truth, when lived, demands everything. It demands sincerity. It demands presence. It demands love so vast that even your darkest parts are welcomed into the light. Blavatsky makes clear that transformation is not linear. It spirals. You will meet the destructor again and again, each time in a new disguise, each time revealing a deeper layer of your psyche, waiting for liberation. And each time you walk through that fire with awareness, the diamond becomes more luminous, the thread more radiant. And this transformation is not just personal, it is profoundly collective. Every step you take toward your own liberation expands what is possible for others. You become a tuning fork for truth, a silent transmission of what's possible, a doorway through which others may walk. This is not metaphor. It is metaphysical law. As you awaken, you affect the entire field of consciousness. Your very presence begins to alter the collective vibration. Those near you begin to remember things they didn't know they'd forgotten. Healing begins to happen in ways that logic can't explain. You are no longer just an individual. You have become a channel through which the universe itself speaks. And it speaks through silence, through stillness, through clarity. This is why the voice of the silence is not merely a book. It's an initiation. Reading it is one thing. Living it is another. When you live these truths, when you embody the teachings, you become part of a lineage that stretches back through the ages. A lineage of souls who chose service over escape, integration over avoidance, truth over comfort. And in this lineage, the role of the bodhisattva is the ultimate embodiment. The bodhisattva does not walk the path to reach enlightenment for themselves. They walk so others may find the path as well. Even at the threshold of final liberation, they turn back, not out of obligation, but out of realization. There is no true freedom while any being remains in chains. In this way, the bodhisattva becomes a bridge between worlds, between realms of existence, between the sleeping and the awake. They become a living vow, not to suffer, but to serve, not to be seen as saints, but to recognize the divine in every being, even those who've forgotten it in themselves. This vow transforms everything. Suddenly, the smallest act becomes sacred. A word of kindness becomes a spiritual offering. Listening becomes healing. Presence becomes liberation. The bodhisattva walks through the world not as someone above it, but as someone completely within it, radiating the light of a consciousness that no longer believes in separation. It is here, at this level of being, that the silver thread undergoes its final transformation. What was once a subtle connection now becomes a living current, a luminous highway of energy flowing between the personal self and the universal self. The seeker no longer asks, "Where is the divine?" They know the divine as the very substance of their awareness. The drop of water finally understands that it is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, in form, and then even form dissolves. The ray of light recognizes itself as the sun. The illusion of division crumbles, and what remains is oneness, not as a concept, but as reality. Yet this oneness does not erase individuality. It sanctifies it. The soul continues to act in the world, but now as an expression of the whole. The personality becomes the garment through which the self shines. Action becomes effortless because it is no longer driven by personal will, but by divine flow. At this stage, even the concept of a spiritual path begins to fade. You are not on a path anymore. You are the path. You are the silence. You are the voice. And all beings, seen and unseen, are recognized as different faces of the same eternal spirit. Every leaf, every breath, every sorrow, every joy, sacred. This is the final secret of the voice of the silence, that there is no distance between you and the divine, no journey, no time, no separation. Everything you are seeking, you already are. The thread does not lead you somewhere else. It leads you deeper into who you've always been. Blavatsky's teachings, like those of the ancients she drew from, are not meant to impress you. They're meant to awaken you, to rattle you out of complacency, to strip away illusion after illusion until what's left is the raw, radiant truth of your being. In a time of global upheaval and spiritual amnesia, this message is more important than ever. We are being called not to escape the world, but to participate in its transformation. Not to retreat into personal peace, but to become vessels of clarity and compassion. Not to worship the sacred as something outside of ourselves, but to realize that we are the sacred made visible. So the question is no longer, will I awaken? The question is, will I respond to the call? Will you remember the silver thread? Will you walk the path not for personal gain, but as an offering to life itself? Because the silence is not silent. It is speaking now. It has always been speaking. Beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the identity. It calls you not to become someone else, but to become fully what you are. Not to reach enlightenment someday, but to live as awareness today, right now. And so, if Blavatsky's message resonates, don't just admire it, engage it, dive into the stillness, meet the destructor, walk the paramitas, serve not from obligation, but from realization. Strengthen the silver thread until it becomes a beam of light that nothing can extinguish. The truth is waiting inside you, not as an idea, but as a presence. A presence that's been patiently waiting for you to turn inward. A presence that knows no separation, no fear, no death. This is the legacy of the voice of the silence, not a doctrine, not a dogma, but a living transmission passed from soul to soul through the ages, a reminder, a guide, a map to your true nature. All you have to do is listen. Truly listen. In the silence, you will hear it. Not with your ears, with your being. The voice speaks not from the outside, but from the depths of your own awareness. It says, "Welcome home."